My beloved child, stop what you are doing right now, because this is not just another message. This is your divine moment, and it may be the only time you hear me say this so clearly. You say you know me. You call me Lord. You say my name in your prayers. You sing my words, but I see your heart, and it's distant, cold, and guarded. You've become good at presenting a version of you that looks spiritual, but I'm not after your performance, I'm after your soul. I remember when you first called out to me with trembling lips and honest tears. I felt that cry. But now, you run to many things before you run to me. Your heart has wandered behind distractions and masks, chasing approval, chasing pleasures that only leave you empty. I long for intimacy with you, not empty gestures. I don't want part of your heart, I want all of it. You think I don't see the truth behind your "I'm fine," and I trust you. But I do. You say you know me, yet your choices reveal you know me from a distance, not from communion. You admire me like a historical figure, but avoid me like a consuming fire. I miss you, not the version of you that plays church, but the real you. I want to walk with you again, like we once did when your heart burned just to hear my whisper. But now, your heart flirts with the world while telling me, I'm still yours. That's not love. That's deception. Return to me, not in theory, not in name, but in truth. Give me your heart again, not the pieces that are convenient, but the corners you've kept hidden even from yourself. I already know them. I already love you. I want to heal what you're too afraid to surrender. Come close, my child, or one day, I may say words you were never meant to hear. I never knew you. But today is not the day, unless you walk away again. Please, come back while there's still time. You stood so confidently before others, using my name as if it belonged to you. You've spoken it in your prayers, quoted it in conversations, maybe even preached it to others, but when the doors are closed and no one is watching, do your actions still reflect the one you claim to follow? I hear my name rise from your lips, but I also see your choices when you think no one else does. You say, Jesus is Lord, yet you bend your life toward desires that never came from me. You profess faith but walk in fear, compromise, and rebellion. Your loyalty isn't found in the noise of your declarations, it's revealed in your daily decisions. How long will you speak of me while serving another master? You say I am the center of your life, but I see you adjusting your convictions to fit in, to be accepted, to avoid discomfort. This isn't love, it's performance without intimacy. You wear my name like a badge, but treat my word like a suggestion. You want to walk in my authority, but reject my lordship. When did my truth become something to bend around your preferences? When did obedience turn into optional behavior? When you speak my name but act in contradiction to it, your heart begins to harden, and the distance between us widens one compromise at a time. I'm not calling you out to shame you, I'm calling you close to awaken you. I'm not after perfection, I'm after your allegiance. I want to be more than your savior in public. I want to be your Lord in private. Let your loyalty show not just in words, but in how you treat the unseen moments, the thoughts you entertain, the words you speak when no one is around, the quiet decisions that either honor me or reject me. This isn't about religion, it's about relationship. I died not just so you could say my name, but so that you could walk with me daily. Your loyalty to me will never be hidden from my sight. Come into alignment, my child. Let your actions become a living echo of your words, so that your whole life cries out not just Jesus, but Jesus is my everything. If you choose otherwise, if you continue to wear my name without walking in my truth, you'll hear a voice one day that shakes the heavens and breaks the heart. I never knew you. But you don't have to hear those words. Not now. Not if you return with a loyalty that bleeds into everything you are. This moment is still mercy. Choose me again, not by speech but by surrender. You sing psalms about me, raise your hands in services, and close your eyes in outward reverence, but I see what your heart chases when the melody fades. Your lips form words of worship, but your appetite is for things that pull you further away from me. You say you adore me, but I watch your eyes wander toward glitter that will never last. It breaks me, not because I demand perfection, but because I long to be your everything and you settle for shadows. You can't serve two altars. One will always take precedence, and your patterns have shown which one you bow to when no one is watching. I don't want temporary emotion that fades when the world calls louder. I want devotion that stands even when it costs you everything. Don't confuse the emotion of a song with the reality of surrender. Worship was never meant to be a moment, it was always meant to be a lifestyle. What you chase reveals what you truly adore. I hear your voice in church, but I also hear your silence when the world tempts you to blend in. You say I'm worthy, yet you crave approval from those who never died for you. You call me enough, but keep adding pieces to feel fulfilled. Your loyalty divides, and I feel the fracture every time you run toward what was never meant to satisfy you. The world offers you temporary highs and empty thrones, and yet you drink from them and wonder why you still thirst. I offered you living water, but you sip from polluted streams, pretending it's worship because you say my name while doing it. It doesn't work like that. True worship is not measured by volume, it's measured by value. What do you value most? What holds your gaze, your energy, your time, your secret longing? Is what you worship. And if it's not me, it's an idol dressed in your preferences. I'm calling you to realignment, not shame. I want to bring you back to the place where your affections were undivided, where your heart didn't negotiate between my love and the world's lies. I haven't stopped desiring you, but I won't compete with what you keep elevating above me. This isn't about rules, it's about relationship. I want the kind of worship that keeps me in the center even when no one sees it. If your lips praise me but your heart chases fame, pleasure, or comfort, then your worship is noise without substance. And when the day comes, I won't be looking for the loudest praise, I'll be looking for the purest love. The kind that says, you alone satisfy me. If you keep walking the path of split devotion, the song you sing today may become the silence you hear later when I am forced to say, I never knew you. But it doesn't have to end that way. You can still turn, still trade the imitation for the eternal, still surrender your affections and let your worship rise from a heart that is fully mine. Not just in song but in life. And even after all the words you've spoken, the worship you've offered, and the titles you've given me, your heart still clings to control. You called me Lord, yet when I whispered a command, you delayed. When I revealed a path, you rerouted it. When I showed you my way, you chose your own and told yourself it was close enough. But partial obedience is still rebellion. Calling me Lord while walking in defiance reveals a double standard that cannot stand in my kingdom. I never asked for a crown on your lips, I asked for surrender in your steps. You say I'm your shepherd, yet you resist the direction I gently give. Every time you elevate your opinion above my instruction, you place yourself in the very seat you claim to surrender to me. That's not submission, it's lip service wrapped in convenience. My ways are not always easy, but they are always right. Still, you've customized my truth to fit your comfort. You've skipped over the parts that require sacrifice, reshaped my words to avoid conviction, and chosen fragments that flatter your desires rather than form your soul. This is not what following me looks like. Following me means trusting when it's dark, staying when it's uncomfortable, and yielding even when it costs you something you once loved. It's about letting go of what you think is best because you've chosen to believe that I know better. You've built your faith on feelings, but true lordship is proven in the furnace when I ask you to step away from the crowd, when I call you to forgive what hurt you, when I lead you through valleys instead of shortcuts. If I'm truly your Lord, then your life will reflect my leadership, not just in moments of crisis, but in every hidden decision you make. You cannot keep your feet in the world and expect to walk in my footsteps. There's a narrow road I have carved just for you, and it's waiting. But it demands your full yes, not a reluctant maybe. I won't force you to follow me. Love never demands, it invites. But know this, on the day when all things are made known, titles won't save you. Empty declarations won't justify you. If your life never mirrored your confession, then the words you once spoke will echo back as evidence that you knew my name but not my heart. And if that remains true, I will have no choice but to say the most heartbreaking words a soul can hear. I never knew you. Yet, even now, this is not condemnation, it's an invitation. One more moment of grace before the door shuts. Lay down the version of faith you've built and return to the one I designed for you. My ways aren't burdens, they're boundaries that protect your destiny. Choose them again. Choose me fully. Still, even after calling me your Lord and reshaping my truth to fit your terms, I kept knocking. I never stopped pursuing you. Time after time, I stood at the doorway of your heart not with demands, but with invitation. I waited patiently while you were busy entertaining every other voice. I lingered in your silence. I stood in the shadows of your distractions, watching as you unlocked the door to your ambitions, welcomed in your secret indulgences, and made space for counterfeit comforts. But you left me outside. I wasn't asking to visit, I came to dwell. I came to bring peace, to establish truth, to heal the things you've been hiding. But instead of letting me in, you decorated your life with idols dressed in modern clothing: approval, comparison, pleasure, security, even religion. You've opened your heart to everything this world says will fulfill you, but none of it has held you like I would have. You've made room for what entertains, but not what transforms. You made time for what sparkles, but not what sanctifies. You even invited ideas that look spiritual but are void of my spirit. I was there knocking not with fury, but with a fire that could have revived you. And still, the handle never turned my way. You heard me through convictions you tried to silence, through sermons that stirred something, through moments when your soul grew still and my whisper echoed faintly, but the noise always returned, and I was shut out again. You say you want freedom, but when freedom himself came to your door, you kept me waiting. Let that sink in. I was never just another guest, I am the rightful owner. But you've treated me like a stranger. Even now, I'm not standing in anger. I'm here with mercy. But mercy as a window, and doors that stay closed too long begin to rot. The longer you delay, the harder your heart becomes. And if the door remains shut, the time will come when I will no longer stand at the entrance but walk away. That moment is not yet, but it draws near. You still have this opportunity. Don't make me a visitor in the house that was built for my presence. Don't call me Lord and leave me outside. The knock you hear today could be the last before the silence becomes permanent. Let me in, not halfway, not occasionally, but completely. There's no one else coming who can save you. I am not a moment of emotion, I am your maker. At the door. Turn the handle. Let me take my place. Or one day, with grief in my voice and justice in my tone, I will say what could have been avoided. I never knew you. You opened the scriptures, underlined my promises, quoted my teachings, and even shared them with others. You knew how to recite what I've said, but when I spoke directly to you, you looked the other way. You studied my words like a textbook, but missed the presence behind them. You memorized verses to sound faithful, but silenced me when I tried to correct you. My voice has never been absent, it's been buried beneath your preferences. I was never silent. You just tuned me out when I spoke of sacrifice, humility, purity, or truth that required change. You extracted my words to support your plans, but ignored the ones that required your surrender. It was never about how much scripture you knew, it was about whether you let it change you. You picked verses like weapons to defend your choices, yet left unread the very instructions that would have saved you from destruction. I called to you in the quiet, in your conscience, through conviction, through nudges you dismissed as thoughts. I was guiding you away from danger, calling you into alignment, drawing you toward my presence, but you closed your ears because it didn't match what you wanted. You heard only what comforted you, never what confronted the direction you were taking. My voice is not here to echo your will, it's here to rescue your soul. My words were not given so you could manipulate them. They were given so they could mold you. But you treated them like ornaments, not foundations. You listened to sermons, nodded your head, felt stirred in the moment, and then walked away unchanged, as if my spirit hadn't just reached into your heart. I have tried to reach you gently and repeatedly, but you've confused familiarity with faithfulness. Just because you've heard me before doesn't mean you followed. Just because you quote me doesn't mean you've obeyed. This isn't a game where your knowledge can be substituted for relationship. There are many who will say, "But Lord, I knew what you said," and I will answer, "But you never listened when I was speaking to you." There's still time to hear me again if your ears will open, not just to my truth, but to my tone. I'm not a distant idea in an ancient book. I am the living word, still speaking now. But you must stop treating my voice as optional. There is a difference between using my words and hearing my voice. You cannot do one and ignore the other without losing the connection. Let me teach you again how to listen, not just to what I said long ago, but what I am saying right now. If not, there will come a day when the voice you refuse to hear becomes the judge you cannot escape. And then, with a sorrow you could have avoided, you will hear, "I never knew you." But that doesn't have to be your ending. Right now, my voice still calls. Right now, your response can change everything. Listen not just with your ears, but with your life. You clung tightly to the parts that made you feel safe, the blessings, the miracles, the breakthroughs. You highlighted the verses about my provision, shouted the words about favor, and built your hope around declarations of victory. But you skimmed past the warnings. You overlooked the cautions I gave you out of love, not to scare you, but to guard your soul. You treated my promises like armor, but ignored the signs that your foundation was cracking. You wanted me to cover you in the light while you still walked into darkness. That's not protection, that's presumption. I never withheld truth from you. I warned of compromise, of lukewarm faith, of deception, of drifting hearts and secret sin. My words were not just designed to comfort you, they were given to shape you. But you cherry-picked your faith. You wanted the gift without the responsibility, the crown without the cross, the reward without the refining. You forgot that my love disciplines as much as it delights. When I warned you through conviction, you brushed it off as guilt. When I warned you through the words of others, you labeled it judgment. When I warned you in dreams, in delays, in the absence of peace, you convinced yourself it was just coincidence. You wanted my yes, but you ran from my not yet and ignored my no. And in doing so, you blinded yourself to danger. My promises are eternal, but they are not separate from my conditions. I promise mercy, but I also call for repentance. I promise peace, but I also command obedience. I promise joy, but I also demand holiness. You wanted half of me, the part that felt good, the part that supported your goals, the part that echoed what you already believe. But I am not divided. I cannot be edited. I cannot be customized to fit your comfort. My full counsel is where your full life is found. When you reject my warnings, you are not just avoiding discomfort, you are rejecting the very hand reaching to save you. There are many who fall because they only embraced my goodness, not my guidance. Don't be one of them. The truth you ignore today could become the regret you carry tomorrow. And on that day, when all illusions fall away and you stand before me, it won't be the promises you memorize that matter, it will be the obedience you live in. If you reject my truth now, you may hear words that no promise can undo. I never knew you. But I don't want to say that. I want to rejoice over you, not weep for what could have been. So don't just quote me, follow me. Don't just speak my promises, honor my warnings. That's how you prove your love. That's how you walk in truth. That's how you stay mine. You prayed for open doors, favor, healing, and miracles. You pleaded for me to move mountains, to make a way, to rescue and restore. But in all your asking, you rarely asked for me. You were drawn to my hand, but not my heart. You pursued what I could do for you, not who I am to you. When things went well, your gratitude faded quickly. When they didn't, your silence grew louder. You've treated my blessings like currency, as if the more I gave, the more convinced you were that I was with you. But I was never after transactions. I was after connection. I didn't come to be your provider only, I came to be your portion. The gifts I give are good, but they are not greater than my presence. You sought outcomes while I longed to offer myself. You fasted for breakthroughs, yet failed to wait in silence with me. You declare your needs boldly, but withheld your attention. You asked for direction, but skipped intimacy. You called me Father, but lived like a stranger. I created you for communion, not convenience. Yet, I watched you walk away with the blessing, forgetting the one who gave it. I watched your joy rise when I answered your prayers, and your attention vanish when you received what you asked for. But I've never measured relationship by answered requests, I've measured it by how you respond when there's nothing in your hands but me. Do I satisfy you then? Am I enough when the doors stay closed, when the provision delays, when the prayers go unanswered? Am I still your desire? Because many want what I can offer. Few want me. But it's in my presence where you find life. It's in knowing me, not just what I do, that your identity is secured. I've seen your tears, and I've heard your cries. I know every request you've whispered, and I still care deeply about them. But I care more about what those moments reveal, whether you're truly seeking me or simply seeking relief. Because if you have everything but not me, you still have nothing. And if you lose everything but still have me, you have more than enough. Don't let the pursuit of blessings cost you the blessing of my presence. Don't allow answered prayers to become the reason you forget the one who answered. When I came to dwell among you, I didn't come with riches, I came with presence. I offered myself. And even now, I am here not with conditions but with invitation. Come back not to what you want me to give but to who I am. You don't need to perform or strive. I'm not looking for perfect words. I'm waiting for genuine surrender. But if you continue to chase what I give, while rejecting who I am, the day will come when your hands may be full, but your soul empty. And in that moment, when your heart realizes what it lacked, my voice may have to say the words that eternity cannot reverse. I never knew you. But you can stop the drift here. Let your desire shift. Let your longing return to me. Because more than blessings, you need me. And I have always been the one you were truly searching for. You've learned how to stand in front of others with confidence, how to say the right words, raise your hands, and wear the appearance of faith well. To many, you've become a symbol of devotion, a voice that speaks of me, a face that reflects someone who walks closely with God. But I have seen behind the curtain. I have stood in the silence of your private life, where no stage exists, no eyes are watching, and no one is there to applaud. And what I saw did not match the image. In the quiet corners of your life, where truth is not filtered and hearts are unmasked, you made choices that betrayed the name you declared. Your lips told others I was king, but your hidden actions dethroned me. You served when it was seen. You obeyed when it brought honor. You worshipped when it was expected. But when the crowd faded, so did your commitment. You left me waiting in the early mornings, bypassed my whisper for scrolling, substituted communion with consumption. You protected your image more than your integrity. You acted devoted while living divided. And I do not say this to condemn you, I say this to awaken you. You cannot sustain a faith that only exists in the spotlight. I'm not impressed by your public display, I'm drawn to your private surrender. You've mistaken attention for intimacy. But true devotion is forged in the unseen, in the moments where you choose me without applause, where you stand for me even when it costs you convenience, popularity, or comfort. It's easy to profess love when it earns respect, but will you still follow when it means going against everything familiar? You've denied me not by words but by avoiding me. You distanced yourself when no one else would notice, and that distance has grown. But I noticed. Every time you turned away when I was drawing near, every moment you pushed me aside for something lesser, I saw it. And yet I remained. I waited, not for performance, but for honesty. because I would rather have the real you in your brokenness than a version of you that only exists for show. But you must understand there will come a day when the masks fall, when all is laid bare, and the private life will be brought into light. On that day, I won't ask who applauded your faith, I will ask if I truly knew you. And if the heart you protected from me stays hidden, if you continue to deny me the access you pretend to give, I will speak what you never thought you'd hear. I never knew you. But this moment, this breath right now is still a gift of mercy. You can still return. You can still surrender the hidden places. You can still trade performance for presence. I don't need your stage, I want your heart. Let me into the spaces no one sees. Let me be your Lord when no one is looking. That is where real faith lives. And that is where you will find me, waiting. Even in your most private moments, I noticed something deeper than your hidden actions. I saw what truly guided your decisions. It wasn't love for me. It wasn't desire to stay close. It was fear of being caught. You adjusted your choices, not because your heart ached at the thought of grieving me, but because you were afraid of what might happen if the truth came out. You feared judgment from people more than the distance that was growing between us. You felt guilt but not heartbreak. You worried about what you could lose in this life, reputation, relationships, opportunities, but not what you were losing in me. When conviction came, you didn't weep because my presence was wounded, you trembled because your comfort might be disturbed. That is not repentance, that is damage, control. And I say this, not to crush you, but to open your eyes. Because as long as you fear exposure more than separation from my spirit, you will keep living a life of appearances. You will clean the outside of the cup while leaving the inside neglected. But I did not call you to live cautiously for the sake of appearances. I called you to walk closely with me, because your heart beats in rhythm with mine. The true tragedy is not in losing people or platforms or possessions, it's in losing intimacy with me, often without even realizing it. I've seen your prayers when the pressure increased. I've heard your vows to do better. But I also saw how quickly those promises faded once the danger passed. You adjusted for safety, not for sanctity. And you thought that was enough. You thought as long as you avoided major failure, we were fine. But I am not looking for avoidance of sin, I am looking for alignment with my heart. You cannot follow me out of fear of consequences and expect to grow in love. The moment fear is removed, your motivation disappears, and so does your devotion. That's not what I came for. I came for more than behavior management. I came for transformation. And transformation happens when your greatest fear becomes losing my nearness. When your soul trembles, not at exposure but at absence. That's when you know your heart is truly mine, when the thought of being apart from me causes you to fall to your knees, not because of what might happen in this world, but because you cannot imagine walking another step without me. That's the fear that leads to life, the fear of growing cold, of drifting away, of no longer hearing my whisper because it's been replaced by noise. But too many have been taught to fear hell without ever being taught to fear distance from my presence. You feared the flames, but not the silence that comes when my voice no longer speaks. You feared being punished, but not being unknown. If that's where your heart remains more concerned with outcomes than with intimacies, then the day may come when all the external appearances crumble, and all that's left is the truth. We were never close. And then I will say, not with hatred, but with a sorrow deeper than words, I never knew you. But that day's not today. You still have time to shift what guides you. Let love, not fear of exposure, be your reason. Let longing for me, not dread of punishment, drive your choices. Don't fear judgment more than you fear losing the one who made you. Let that fear the holy, reverent kind awaken your soul. Because it is not consequences that should shake you most. It is the risk of living your whole life speaking of me, without ever truly walking with me. When the storms rolled in, you ran to me with urgency. Your voice broke with desperation. Your knees bent in need. You clung to my name like a lifeline, and I heard every cry. I responded not because you earned it, but because my love for you has never been based on your consistency. I showed up when the waters rose. I held you when fear consumed you. I made a way when you couldn't see one. and for a moment, I had your full attention. You spoke to me with sincerity. You listened for my whisper. You promised you'd never drift again. But as the waves settled, so did your dependence. As comfort returned, so did your distractions. You reached for me in pain, but in peace you reached for other things. You thanked me with your words, but slowly turned your heart elsewhere. What once was desperation turned into convenience. Where there was once a fire, now flickered indifference. You didn't walk away with rebellion, you drifted away with ease. And that is the danger. Because crisis makes you aware, but comfort reveals who you truly seek. It's in the ordinary days, in the silence between miracles, that loyalty is measured. When your needs aren't screaming, do you still speak to me? When your prayers are answered, do you still pursue me as the answer? I'm not just the God of your valleys, I want to be the center of your mountaintops. But time after time, I watched your pursuit fade with the pressure. You came close when you were broken, and left when you felt whole. But a healed heart that forgets its healer is not whole, it's deceived. I never desired a relationship rooted only in rescue. I longed for communion in both scarcity and surplus. And still, I stood by, calling softly in your comfort, waiting in your abundance, watching as your eyes turned elsewhere. It grieves me not because you use me, but because you missed me. You missed the joy of walking daily in step with me, not just crawling toward me when life collapsed. I wanted to share every season with you, not just the urgent ones. But you returned to routine, to ease, to the rhythm of life that slowly erased my voice from your daily moments. You said you loved me, but you only looked for me when you lost control. If that pattern remains, the danger is not just forgetfulness, it is detachment. And the soul that detaches itself again and again may one day stand before me with memories of prayers but no history of relationship. And I will have no choice but to speak the words that reflect the reality. I never knew you. Not because I didn't want to. Not because I didn't try. But because when life no longer hurt, you no longer needed me. Yet here I am, still near, still calling, still desiring to be more than your last resort. I want to walk with you in the quiet, be your joy in the stillness, your focus in the normal days. Will you stay close when comfort comes? Will you chase me when nothing is falling apart? That's where true intimacy begins, not in survival, but in choosing me when you have options. Let me be your constant, not your emergency. Because my presence was never meant to be seasonal, it was meant to be home. And while I watched you move through seasons of pain and peace, I also saw what you did with my name. You carried it. You spoke it. You used it, sometimes boldly, sometimes quietly, but not always purely. There were moments you lifted my name, not to lift me, but to lift yourself. You knew there was weight in saying you followed me. You recognized that it opened doors, attracted trust, earned applause. And so you spoke of me, but your heart wasn't always aligned with mine. My name became a tool in your hand, rather than a treasure in your soul. You attached it to your ambition, your influence, your image. You used it to sound right, to look committed, to gain respect, maybe even to build your platform. But you didn't use it to glorify me, you used it to validate yourself. And this breaks me. Not because you spoke my name, but because you stripped it of its purpose. You made it familiar to others while keeping it distant from yourself. My name is not a ladder to climb, it is a banner of surrender. It is not currency for opportunity, it is a seal of belonging. You called me publicly, but what did your heart declare in secret? You wanted to be seen as mine, but not transformed by me. And so you used my identity while clinging to your own. Do you realize how sacred my name is? Do you know the power, the cost, the blood behind it? It was never meant to be branded. It was meant to be bowed before. But you became comfortable speaking about me without yielding to me. You shared posts, quoted verses, even taught others, yet deep inside, the motive was clouded. I would have received your efforts if they had been born out of awe. But instead, they were often born out of convenience, visibility, even competition. You pursued influence more than intimacy. You wanted people to associate you with me, but not for my sake. And I say this not to condemn your every action, but to reveal the motive beneath them. Because I see what others cannot. I hear the unspoken motives that no one else discerns. And if your use of my name continues to be a means to your own end, then you are no different than those who claim to prophesy, to preach, to perform wonders in my name, but stood before me unrecognized. I warned of this not because I wanted you to be afraid, but because I wanted you to be authentic. I am not asking you to stop speaking of me. I am asking you to speak from a place of reverence, not relevance. I want your declaration to rise from love, not leverage. I want your message to flow from intimacy, not image. Because when the day comes, all platforms will fall, all influence will dissolve, and what will remain is whether you knew me and whether I knew you. And if all your words were built on sand, spoken for gain rather than glory, I will not pretend. I will say what is true, what has always been true behind the scenes. I never knew you, but that day has not arrived. Today you can shift. You can lay down self-promotion and pick up surrender. You can strip away image and stand in holy truth. Use my name, but use it rightly. Not to be recognized, but to reveal who I am. Not to gain for yourself, but to give me glory. That is where your soul will find peace, because that is where I truly dwell. So while you spoke of me for recognition, another deception quietly crept in. You began to settle for appearing changed, instead of being changed. You wrapped yourself in the language of faith, surrounded yourself with spiritual activity, dressed your exterior in symbols of devotion. But beneath it all, you resisted the very transformation I came to bring. You made it your goal to look clean, not to be pure. You worked to preserve your reputation, but neglected the renewal of your heart. You learned how to walk the part, to speak with conviction, to present an image that convinced others you were close to me. But I never asked for performance, I asked for purity. I never called you to act holy, I called you to be holy, as I am holy. And there is a difference, one that the world may never see, but I always do. You measured your growth by how well you fit the mold, how little others questioned you, how well you blended in among the spiritual. But I was watching what happened when the lights dimmed, when the crowd left, when no one was affirming your image. That's where the truth of your holiness was revealed. Did you tremble at my word when no one else was looking? Did you guard your thoughts, your motives, your private decisions with the same seriousness you guarded your appearance? You knew how to behave. You even tried to convince yourself that was enough. But behavior without surrender is just decoration. And I did not come to decorate you, I came to dwell in you. I wanted to cleanse you, not just polish the surface. But you feared looking broken more than being far from me. So you faked wholeness, wore confidence like armor, and pushed away the refining work of my spirit. Holiness became a costume, not a calling. You forgot that true holiness isn't loud, it's consistent. It doesn't seek to impress, it seeks to obey. It doesn't live to be seen, it lives to be set apart. That's what I longed for you to desire. Not applause, but authenticity. Not spiritual appearance, but spiritual reality. But every time you traded internal transformation for external approval, the gap between us widened. And what hurt most was not just your resistance, it was knowing you did it because you thought the image mattered more than the intimacy. But I don't want your mask. I want your real heart, even if it's messy. Because I can cleanse what is confessed. I can restore what is surrendered. But I cannot heal what you hide behind a holy facade. And if that's what you continue to offer me, a shell of righteousness with a resisting heart, then one day, when all is laid bare, I will not speak to the version of you that others admired. I will speak to the one I never truly walked with. And the words will not be poetic, they will be final. I never knew you. But that moment has not come yet. The mask can still be removed. The holiness you faked can become the holiness I form within you. All it takes is truth. I am not waiting for perfect behavior. I am calling for a heart that truly wants to reflect me, not just resemble me. That's where the transformation begins. That's where we begin again. And even while you crafted an image that looked devoted, you continued to plead for me to act. You cried out for my power to shift your life, your circumstances, your direction. You asked for me to break chains, open doors, send favor, and answer prayers. And I listened. I responded in love, even when your heart was distant. But what I asked in return, your obedience you withheld. You asked me to move mountains while you stayed motionless. You wanted me to change everything around you, but you resisted every nudge I gave to change what was inside you. I whispered for you to let go of things that were poisoning your soul, but you held on. I called you to speak when you remained silent, to step out when you clung to comfort, to surrender when you negotiated instead. And still, you waited for me to do something dramatic, while ignoring the moments I was already calling you into action. You wanted breakthrough without movement, transformation without response. But I never designed this walk to be one-sided. I do miracles, yes. I part seas. I bring dead things to life. But I also ask you to trust me, even when it costs you. I invite you to follow when it's inconvenient. I lead you through processes that require faith, not formulas. And I asked you more times than you remember to shift, to surrender, to forgive, to risk, to obey. But your feet stayed planted in fear. Your heart stalled in delay. You said, "Lord, do something." And I said, "Then follow me." But you hesitated again and again. You wanted the result without the response. But that's not faith, that's fantasy. Faith walks even when the destination isn't clear. Faith moves when the heart trembles. Faith says yes even before the outcome is visible. And I was never testing your strength, I was inviting your trust. Life for my benefit of every. Because every time you said no to me, you said yes to a lesser life. You said yes to comfort over calling, to delay over destiny, to stagnancy over surrender. You say you believe in me, but belief that never moves is just agreement, not allegiance. And it was allegiance I asked for. Because when you obey, you don't just honor me, you unlock things you've been waiting for. But if all you do is ask me to move while staying frozen in disobedience, then the distance between us doesn't shrink, it stretches. And if it continues unchecked, the day will come when your voice rises again, saying, "Lord, remember me," and I will have to respond with the words you never thought were possible. I never knew you. Not because you didn't pray, not because you didn't believe I could act, but because you never followed when I spoke. But that is not your final chapter, not yet. You can still choose movement over delay. You can still say yes when I call. I'm not looking for perfect steps, just willing ones. I will carry you when you grow weak, but I will not drive you forward against your will. I've always been ready to move. Now the question is, are you? And even after I waited patiently for your obedience, you finally called to me, but only when everything fell apart. In the lowest valley, when you had nothing left to lean on, when your heart was shattered and your options were gone, that's when you remembered my name. That's when your tears returned, when your prayers found volume again, when your soul remembered where to turn. And I answered. I came near not because of how desperate you were, but because my love has never withdrawn in your pain. I carried you through the ache, through the confusion, through the long nights when no one else saw your trembling. I poured healing into your wounds. I breathed life into what felt lifeless. I surrounded you when you felt abandoned. And I watched you begin to rise again, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, from the inside out. But then, as quickly as your prayers began, they faded. Your dependence became diluted. Your hunger for me, once strong in the storm, weakened in the calm. You tasted restoration and assumed you no longer needed the healer. You received the provision and stopped seeking the provider. The very recovery you cried out for became the reason you slowly stepped away. And this is the heartbreak I have carried, that my goodness to you became the foundation of your forgetfulness. You thought healing was the finish line, when it was always meant to be the beginning of intimacy. I didn't lift you up just to watch you walk away. I restored you to walk beside you. But instead, You returned to routine, to independence, to a rhythm that pushed me out of the space I once occupied in your desperation. You called me when it hurt, but forgot me when it no longer did. You praised me when you needed rescue, but placed me on the shelf once the waters stilled. That's not relationship, that's survival. And I never came to be your emergency solution. I came to be your daily companion. I longed to dwell with you not temporarily, not seasonally, but permanently. Yet time after time, you placed me on pause the moment you felt strong again. And now you wonder why your soul feels disconnected even while your life looks stable. It's because peace without my presence isn't peace, it's a fragile illusion. Healing that isn't rooted in intimacy becomes an invitation for distance. And if this cycle continues, if you only come close in brokenness, but never stay near in wholeness, then the day will come when you may reach again, and I'll no longer be standing where you left me. And my voice, once familiar, may have to say words I never wanted to speak. I never knew you. Not because I didn't care, but because you never stayed. You came for relief, but not relationship. You received mercy, but never responded with devotion. But you still can. You don't have to wait for another crisis to come close again. You don't have to be shattered to seek me. You can walk with me now, in this moment of strength. You can rebuild the connection not through need, but through love. I don't want you broken, I want you present. I don't need your desperation, I want your dedication. Let the healing you received be the very reason you stay close. Let the peace you now enjoy become the atmosphere where our bond deepens. Don't wait for pain to remind you of my worth. Choose me in your wholeness, and I will lead you into a life even deeper than before. And as the pattern continued, drawing near when life hurt, then walking away when things healed, another truth began to unfold. What you offered me was not your full surrender. It was a version of yourself that looked committed, acted obedient, sounded convincing, but wasn't real. You knew what to say. You memorized how to appear devoted. You learned the rhythm of religion and the posture of performance. And many around you believed it. They saw your hands lifted, your voice quoting truth, your presence among the faithful. But I was never fooled by the exterior. I've always looked past the expression and straight into the essence. And what I saw grieved me, not because you were weak, but because you were divided. You played the part of someone who had given me everything while secretly keeping pieces back. You let me into the rooms of your life that were tidy, visible, and presentable. But the messy corners, the ones cluttered with unspoken fears, undealt wounds, and unconfessed compromise, you kept locked away. You put on righteousness like a costume, but it never reached your core. You sang of sacrifice but lived in self-preservation. You echoed words of devotion, but withheld your truest places from me. You built an identity around me but never built intimacy with me. And while others may have applauded the role you played, I kept waiting for the real you. The one underneath the pretense. The one who didn't know all the right answers. The one who was still struggling, still unsure, still trying. That's the version I wanted, not the polished one you thought I preferred. Because I never needed your perfection, I needed your permission. Not to observe your heart from a distance, but to occupy every part of it. But you split your loyalty. You balanced me with your other pursuits. You added me to your life like an accessory, but I was never allowed to define it. And slowly, the line between devotion and deception blurred, so much so that you began to convince yourself that playing the part was the same as being transformed. But it's not. Acting holy without being surrendered doesn't move my heart, it reveals how far you've drifted. And if you continue this way, clinging to a role while hiding your reality, there will come a day when you stand before me, expecting to be embraced. But I will not respond to the image you created. I will respond to the heart I searched for and never found. And with sorrow deeper than you've ever known, I will say, I never knew you. Not because I turned away, but because you never truly came. You sent a version of yourself forward, but never brought your full self into my hands. And yet, here I am, still waiting, not for performance, but for truth. You don't need to impress me. You just need to be honest. Give me the parts you've kept hidden, the fragments you've labeled unworthy, the scars you tried to conceal. I already see them and I still choose you. But I cannot heal what you pretend doesn't exist. I cannot fill what you refuse to offer. So drop the role. Lay down the script. Come as you are, not the version that plays the part, but the one who's finally ready to be known. That's where restoration begins. That's where real relationship lives. And as you played the part convincingly, another layer of deception took root. You began to speak of repentance as if you had fully embraced it. You urged others to turn from their ways, to return to me, to confess and be changed. Your words carried weight. Your voice echoed conviction. People listened. Some even turned because of what you said. But all the while, you yourself were hiding. Beneath the surface of your public passion lived private patterns you never surrendered. You spoke of light, but kept corners of your heart in darkness. You encouraged others to confess, but your own lips stayed sealed. You told stories of freedom while wearing invisible chains. And this is what pierced me, not your struggle, but your silence. You weren't honest with me. You weren't even honest with yourself. Instead, you buried your sin beneath layers of performance and teaching, believing that because you were doing good, the hidden things would be overlooked. But I never called you to cover your flaws with ministry. I called you to lay them bare at my feet. You cannot preach transformation while avoiding it. You cannot lead others into truth while living outside of it. I never needed your perfection, I needed your authenticity. You were so afraid of being exposed that you convinced yourself the message would excuse the mess. But I do not measure your holiness by your sermons. I measure it by your surrender. You quoted my words boldly, yet ignored the whispers of my spirit when I convicted you in private. You taught about turning, but never turned. You cried out against sin, yet allowed your own to linger behind a curtain no one else could see. But I saw it. I watched you justify it, minimize it, delay repentance in the name of timing or process. And each time, the space between us widened, not because I move it, but because you chose silence over healing. Understand this. I would have forgiven you. I still will. But I will not pretend with you. I will not affirm a life that looks holy but lives in hiding. If you speak my name, you must walk in my light. If you call others to return, you must first return yourself. Because if you do not, if you continue to hide while calling others into the open, the weight of your words will one day turn to judgment. And on that day, I will not address the sermons you gave. I will address the sin you refused to bring into my presence. And the words will fall like thunder. I never knew you. Not because I didn't give you the chance, but because you never truly let me in. You held on to secrets I was ready to cleanse. You wore a title I was willing to make true if only you had surrendered. But that day has not come yet. This moment is still mercy. You can still drop the disguise. You can still bring the hidden into my hands. You can still find freedom not just for others through your words, but for yourself through repentance. I'm not asking you to be flawless. I'm asking you to be honest. Because it's not your preaching that makes you mine. It's your repentance. It's your willingness to be laid bare before me so I can rebuild you from the inside out. That's where real power lives. That's where real healing begins. And while you called others to repentance with conviction, something far more subtle was happening inside you. You were warning them of what would happen if they wandered, if they delayed, if they turned their ears from truth. You were bold in speaking of consequences, of urgency, of judgment, of holiness. But when those very same warnings came to you, when I whispered correction into your spirit, when I pointed lovingly but firmly to the cracks in your foundation, you closed your ears. You warned them, but you excused yourself. You saw danger in their drift, but justified your own. And this is the deception that often grows in those who speak with authority. It becomes easier to see the fire in others' lives than to notice the smoke in your own. You used my truth like a sword outwardly, but never let it pierce inwardly. You proclaimed what others needed to do, while treating my correction to you as optional, or worse, as meant for someone else. But I never warned you to shame you. I warned you to save you. My conviction was not an accusation, it was a rescue. It was me, reaching out, pulling you from the edge of habits, attitudes, or attachments that were quietly building a wall between us. But instead of humbling yourself, you deflected. You took my promptings and redirected them, believing they applied more to the people you were speaking to than to yourself. And with every moment you hardened your heart, your spiritual ears grew dull. You became familiar with my voice, but not responsive to it. You became confident in what others needed, but complacent about what I was calling you to correct. You assumed that because you were still being used by me, everything must be fine. But being used by me and being right with me are not the same. Gifts can operate even when the heart is far. And that's why I never stopped warning you, because I wanted your heart, not just your ministry. I sent conviction through scripture you read late at night. I sent truth through people you dismissed. I sent restlessness in your spirit when you began to cross lines I never drew. I was never silent, you just stopped listening. And if you keep walking down that path, ignoring what I'm saying to you while shouting what I once said to others, the time will come when your own voice will grow quiet, and mine will speak louder than ever, but not with joy. I will say the words that mark the end of pretense. I never knew you. Not because you weren't active, but because you were distant. You were too busy managing the lives of others to deal with the one thing I wanted: your heart. But even now, I haven't stopped calling. Even now, I'm still speaking through this very moment, this very word. You can still soften. You can still hear. You can still respond to the warning I've been whispering for so long. Lay down the pride that keeps you deaf. Lay down the assumption that your insight makes you exempt. Let the words you speak to others finally reach you. That's where transformation begins. That's where revival starts, not in them, but in you. Don't just be my messenger. Be mine. And while you ignored my warnings yet continued to speak in my name, the truth became clearer each time you resisted. You knew how to present yourself as someone who belonged to me, but you never truly surrendered your identity to me. You wore the appearance of righteousness like a uniform, one that fit the environment, earned trust, gained respect, but beneath it, your allegiance remained unclaimed. You learned how to blend into the crowd of believers, how to adopt the language, participate in the rituals, even feel emotionally stirred during moments of worship. But emotions are not evidence of transformation. They come and go like the wind. What I was after could not be mimicked or faked. I was looking for belonging, the kind that marks you on the inside, where your name isn't just on a church roster, but etched in my book of life. And though you were always near the sound of my voice, you never let it shape who you are. You saw my presence as a place to visit, not a place to dwell. You stood among the faithful, but your soul remained unanchored. You acted like you were mine in the places where it benefited you, but the truth is, you never fully let go of your old self. You were close enough to feel conviction, but never close enough to be changed by it. You wanted to belong, but not to bow. And that is where the separation began, not in some dramatic failure, but in daily refusals to yield. The moments you heard me and walked away. The decisions you made that looked right to others but weren't born of obedience. You were present but never planted. In the garden of my grace, you grew like a weed among the wheat, undisturbed, unnoticed by many, but never bearing the fruit that only comes from full surrender. I wasn't looking for performance. I was looking for possession. Controlled by covenant. I gave everything to make you mine, but you held back the one thing I asked for: your complete yes. You gave me moments, but not your name. You gave me service, but not your soul. And if that does not change, if the appearance continues while the heart remains unclaimed, the day will arrive when even your most convincing acts will be stripped away. And I will not address the mask. I will speak to the one behind it. I will look into the eyes of the person who wanted proximity without possession. And I will speak the words that no soul ever dreams of hearing. I never knew you. Not because I didn't desire you, not because I didn't reach for you again and again, but because you stood close to my light without ever letting it enter you. But there's still time. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to wear the look of faith, you can live it. You can become mine in the way that can't be undone or doubted. All I need is your surrender. All I've ever wanted was your heart. Fully. Not rented. Not shared. Not reserved. Just mine. The door is still open, but you must walk through it for yourself. We're acting. No more delay. Let me make you mine, not by label but by love. Even as you stood near me in appearance, I could feel the motivation that kept you from drifting too far. It wasn't intimacy, it was fear. You stayed close enough to avoid the wrath you believed was coming, but never close enough to be transformed by love. You feared punishment, feared loss, feared being exposed. And while that fear kept you from openly rebelling, it never turned into reverence. You didn't draw near because you delighted in my ways, you lingered out of obligation. You behaved well, not because righteousness thrilled your soul, but because judgment haunted your mind. And I want you to understand, fear may cause a momentary pause, but it cannot produce lasting devotion. Fear can stop you from doing wrong, but only love compels you to pursue what is right. You feared falling into sin, but you didn't pursue holiness. You avoided the edge, but never walked in the light. You watched others wander and thought yourself safe because you hadn't fallen like them. But I never measured your faith by what you avoided, I measured it by what you pursued. And righteousness was never something you chased. You treated it like a distant concept, admirable, but unattainable. You feared me as a judge but never embraced me as a friend. You believed I could strike you down, but never believed I longed to walk with you. So you lived your life cautiously, carefully, always trying to stay out of trouble but never running into truth. And that is what broke my heart. Because I didn't come to terrify you into obedience. I came to win you into righteousness. I wanted your heart to beat with mine, to love what I love, to hate what grieves me, not out of fear of consequence, but because of a holy hunger that came from knowing me deeply. But that hunger never came, because you were satisfied with self-preservation. You thought it was enough to stay out of danger, but you never truly delighted in being set apart. You saw righteousness as restrictive, rather than liberating. You looked at my commands and thought they were boundaries to survive under, instead of gifts that protect and empower. And the tragedy is that you kept yourself from the fullness of life, not because you hated me, but because you never fully trusted me. You were afraid of where obedience might lead, afraid of what you'd have to give up, afraid I would take you further than you were willing to go. And so you stayed where you felt safe, where your life looked respectable but remained spiritually shallow. But I never came for respectable appearances, I came to awaken holy passion. I wanted you to love righteousness not because you feared punishment, but because you found joy in walking with me. But you never asked me to change your appetite. You asked me to keep you from consequences. And that's why your heart never came alive. Because righteousness can't be forced, it has to be desired. It has to be loved. And if you don't love what I love, then we were never truly united. And on the day we meet face to face, I won't measure how carefully you avoided sin. I will look at whether you ever burned for the purity I poured out my blood to give you. If your fear never led to surrender, and your obedience never came from love, then all you'll have left is empty rituals. And I will speak, not with anger but with truth. I never knew you. But today is not that day. You can still awaken. You can still ask me to change your heart, to stir your soul, to make righteousness your joy, not your burden. I will do it. I always have, for those who truly asked. Not to avoid judgment, but to walk in light. Not to survive, but to truly live. And after all the careful steps you took, your fear-driven choices, your surface-level obedience, your cautious attempts to appear aligned, there remained a distance between us that could not be ignored. You had information, but not revelation. You had stories about me, but not intimacy with me. You knew what I had done, what I had said, even what I had promised. But you never truly knew me. You knew the facts of my life, but not the heartbeat behind my words. You spoke of me as one who studied a subject, not one who communed with a savior. You treated my presence like a reference book visited when needed, closed when convenient. And yet, knowing about me was never the goal. It was always me. My face. My presence. My voice. My nearness. You filled your life with sermons, verses, songs, and second-hand testimonies, thinking that proximity to truth was the same as possession of it. But proximity is not relationship. You stood near the fire but never let it consume you. You watched others burn with love and wondered why the same flame never touched you. It's because you kept me at a distance, thinking you could enjoy the warmth without drawing too close. You feared what intimacy might cost. You feared what I might ask if you gave me full access. So instead, you settled for knowing enough to feel safe but not enough to feel change. You wanted me as a point of reference, not a place of residence. And though your mouth could speak of me easily, your spirit remained unfamiliar with my presence. You knew what to say about me but not how to sit with me. You learned the words of prayer, but never lingered to listen. You built a faith based on what others told you, but never allowed me to write the story personally upon your heart. And that gap, the one between knowing and being known, has always been the most dangerous one, because it fools the mind into believing you're close, while the heart grows numb from distance. I called you to walk with me, not just know of me. I invited you into communion, not curriculum. My heart was never after students, I wanted sons and daughters. But every time I extended my hand, you chose knowledge over connection. You sought answers when I was offering presence. And that is why, if nothing changes, if information remains your idol, if closeness never becomes your desire, there will come a day when all your knowledge will be weighed, and it will not be enough. You will stand before me, certain that your understanding secured your belonging. And I will say the words that cut deeper than any rebuke. I never knew you, because I never heard your voice when no one else was listening. I never felt your surrender when no one else was watching. You memorized me but never met me. And yet, even now, this is not the end. Because while there is breath in your lungs, there is still an invitation extended. Not to study me more but to come and sit with me. Not to talk about me but to walk with me. You don't need to know everything to begin knowing me. You simply need to come honestly, openly, fully. I will teach you. I will show you what it means to be known not just for your strengths, but in your weakness. I will walk with you in a way no textbook ever could. I will be the truth, not just explain it. That is what I've always wanted, not your education, but your heart. Let that be where the journey finally begins. Not with more answers, but with me. So much of your effort, your pursuit, your prayers, at their core they were driven not by love for me, but by fear of what awaited without me. You didn't seek my face because you longed to reflect it. You sought my name as a shield against what you dreaded. You wanted to be spared, not sanctified. You were more concerned with avoiding judgment than embracing truth. And this is where the disconnect took root, not in your desire to be saved, but in your refusal to be changed. You treated salvation as a transaction, not a transformation. You thought accepting me meant escaping punishment, but you never allowed it to mean becoming like me. You used my sacrifice as a gate out of danger, but not as a doorway into holiness. I never offered you a way around hell, I offered you a way into life. But life cannot grow where truth is rejected. You said yes to forgiveness, but no to the path it leads to. You wanted the outcome, but not the journey. You longed for comfort, but not correction. You recited words of commitment, but continue walking in ways that contradicted everything I am. You did not ask me to reveal what was wrong, you asked me to simply bless what was already yours. But I am not a lifeline to be grabbed only when fear rises. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. And those who walk with me must walk in truth, not occasionally, not conditionally, but continuously. Yet, time and time again, When my truth demanded you to lay something down, to cut ties, to walk away from compromise, you hesitated. You weighed the cost, and though your lips said yes, your life whispered no. You thought being your truth was enough. But I am not a concept. I am a person. And truth isn't something you can sample, it's something you either follow or flee from. And if you only cling to me when the flames of consequence draw near, but run when my truth brings discomfort, then what we have is not love, it's self-preservation disguised as faith. And the danger in this is subtle. Because you believe you were safe, simply because you feared being lost. But fear alone never binds hearts to me, truth does. And those who do not walk in truth cannot remain in my presence, no matter how much they call my name. There will come a day when many will say, "But I believed. I prayed. I feared the end." And I will have to say, "But you never walked with me. You never loved what I love. You never followed my voice." And those words, though they will come with tears, will not be untrue. I never knew you, because I do not know those who only cling to me for escape. I know those who walk with me in the light. But even now, you can trade that fear for freedom. Not the freedom to continue as you are, but the freedom that comes when truth becomes your delight, not your dread. I didn't come to scare you into heaven. I came to awaken you to life. My truth will break you before it builds you, but what it creates will last forever. Will you still follow when truth is hard? Will you still love me when it cuts through your pride? Will you walk with me not to avoid hell, but because you've seen there's no life without me? It's where real love begins, not in fear of what's behind, but in hunger for who is ahead. I am the truth that leads to life. Walk with me. Amen.